Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Office Podcast. I'm your host, Hassan. Just want to thank everyone for tuning into the last episode. It's been a while. It has been a while since the last episode. I've just been figuring out the format of where I want to take this, and I think I've got it. I think I can do the show some justice. So, I was watching the first season of The Office recently, and I always go back to this season as a benchmark. I always go back to it as kind of the starting point of the whole journey of the best show ever created. And every time I watch it, I can't help but think why the writers went in that direction to copy it like for like. I know the first few episodes were literally like for like, and then they kind of broke away a little bit afterwards. And it really was 50-50 in my opinion. I think the show could have failed very, very badly. One example I always think about is if you're familiar with the show Inbetweeners from the UK originally. It was a great show. People loved it. Millions watched it. And, you know, it's one of those shows that goes down in history. And then the US tried to come through, copy the format, and it just didn't work. I mean, I probably watched one episode and it just wasn't funny. It just didn't hit the same way the UK one did. Whereas The Office was a little bit different. I think the US version of The Office, in my opinion, was a lot more funnier. Um, and for me, the UK one was good. It was very, very good, but I don't think it was as funny as the US version. And I have to ask myself, man, like why they went in the direction of copying the UK one. I know Jim mentioned it early on when he was being interviewed and stuff for the roles and things, and he said he didn't want them to butcher the first season and stuff. And I think he was right. I think had they made the first season look bad, it would have been game over for them. And I think the first two episodes they came very close to doing that. Um, there was no real continuity with the characters. There was no real connection between the characters. It just seemed like a very awkward place. And a lot of the individuals had worked there for a very long time. And the fact that they weren't interacting the way they would as colleagues was a little bit weird. You know, even someone as close as the accounting department who weren't really talking much to one another, which was a bit strange. You know, they've got their back and forth and things. And yeah, I think season one was a hit or miss. And I think they hit it, they just hit it. And had they not, it would have been a disaster from there on out. And obviously, you know, the show was in jeopardy a few times, and season one being one of the reasons why. So I just wanted to dissect season one, delve into it a little bit. So obviously you had the pilot, which was, you know, again, like I said, a like for like of the pilot of the UK version. Episode two, similar. Episode three, similar. And then episode four, I believe, is the one where they did the Office Olympics, if I remember correctly, and Michael's buying his condo. Um, and I think that is the only episode where they moved away. All the characters look different. Episode one, Jim, and episode four, Jim, was completely different, as was Dwight, as was Michael, as were the others. I think they really got out of their shells by that episode. And I think they had to do that. I think had the characters been sort of boring throughout, like they were in the earlier episodes, they would have had a lot of problems moving forward. And then as you see this show, it goes from strength to strength to strength. Even when Michael leaves, which is a massive, massive, you know, had a massive impact on the show. I believe a lot of the ratings went down, a lot of the viewership went down, but you know they held it together for the last two seasons, and I think that's only because they'd built strong foundations from season two onwards. And had they not, had they made Michael the sole focus of the show, there would have been a very big problem. Yes, he was a main character. Yes, he was a big part of the show. But I believe that Michael did have a uniqueness to him, but so did the other characters. Now, let's think of a hypothetical here. Had they got rid of Jim, Dwight, and Michael, then that would have been game over for the whole show. I think, you know, Jim and Dwight being the main characters for me, full stop. I think Michael, of course, is in it. He's a main character. But I think Jim and Dwight were actually the main focus of The Office. You know, I think Michael is in every episode in the beginning, as are the other two. Um, But I think for me, Jim and Dwight were the main characters. That's who the recording crew focused on, and they were the ones that had their kind of back and forth. Michael had his quirks. Michael was that boss that wanted to be everyone's friend, but no one liked. Michael was the one that was trying to be cool and would say all these outrageous things to get the attention and everything else. But I think when Michael left, yeah, it was a big void in everyone's hearts and everyone's lives. But people recovered quickly because they remembered how strong the show was with just the remaining characters, the Jims and the Dwights of the world. Even Andy stepped up a little bit when he became the manager, but even then, Andy, wasn't really a main character for me. He's in the opening credits of the show, fair dues to him, but for me, he wasn't really a big part of the show like that. When he left, when he went to go do his anger management, I didn't really miss him. Michael, when he left, yeah, I missed him a little bit. I won't lie. I was wondering what the rest of the season would hold. It was a pretty strong finale, and then season 8 starts, and it's pretty good. You've got Robert California in there as well, who again, not a main character for me. He might be the new CEO of the company, but he just wasn't. And I think for me, all the side characters, the Creeds, the Erins, the Kellys, the Ryans, all those guys, they did bring it together. They were able to make a strong show after Michael had gone. But again, man, if you remove all these characters, and I mentioned it, I keep mentioning about Pam, man. I know it's a very unpopular opinion, but even Pam, if you took her out, took Ryan, Kelly, Creed, all these guys out, you'd still have a very strong show. The Office obviously had to portray an office, an office full of people. But had you not had that many people or a smaller company, I think they still would have thrived. Jo coming in randomly, yeah, she famous actress, I can't remember her name, but very good actor, very good indeed, but again, not really a main character for me. And again, this all goes back to season 1, the setup. It all starts off with season 1 and how everyone had to get their roles right. Everyone had to get set the tone correctly. And again, if they had done it any other way, I think the way they were going, they would have done better earlier on in the seasons. I think them copying the UK version would have been a disaster, a big disaster had they carried on. I think the UK version's only 3 seasons anyway, 2 or 3 seasons. And obviously they moved away from that completely, but I think the biggest mistake they made was to copy the first season like for like in the first sort of few episodes. I think they should have stayed away from that and done their own thing, and then the show wouldn't have been in jeopardy. That's just my opinion. Again, I'm a very big fan of the show, as I've mentioned in previous podcasts, and these critiques that I make and these observations that I'm making is from a place of love, because I genuinely do love this show. It's the perfect show. I've mentioned this multiple times. I've seen some great shows in my time. I watch some great shows now, and I think back to the feeling I got when I first watched The Office. I think back to all of the different times where I got to experience different emotions watching the show. Like some of the one-liners that Michael had they were absolutely outrageous. They'd make me laugh literally for days after when I thought about them. No other show has done that. No other show has left such a big impact on me. Obviously, different genres of show, yes, you could argue that they leave a different impact, but this show for me is a show I can watch every day. It's a show that isn't very long. It's a show that you can kind of just put on and you know exactly where it is in the story, that where things are going to go, what's going to happen. And the reason why I'm such a strong critique of this show is for that very reason. I've watched it for over 10 years, and I think being able to dissect the show like the big fans can is a skill within itself, because you need to understand all the different nuances. You need to understand all the different storylines, the plots, where the characters fit in, where the trajectory of those characters is going, why certain things are happening the way they are. And once you can understand that, you can call yourself an Office fan. I mean, if you're just the casual viewer of The Office, that's absolutely fine as well. But I think, this podcast is a little bit nerdy, and it gets into, the real deep dive into the show and why so many people love it. And for me, man, it really is, the best show I've ever watched. I've said it before, I'll say it again. But guys, that is that is the podcast for today. I just wanted to do a quick little deep dive into season 1 and, how it made me feel, how I thought they could have changed it, or, how I thought they could have done something differently. But it is what it is. It's still an amazing show. And hopefully the next episode, I will be getting back to characters. I'm not sure who I'm going to visit just yet, but definitely going to look at another character. And again, thank you for supporting. Thank you for listening or watching, whatever platform you're consuming this content on. I really appreciate the love and support. I will catch you again on the next episode. Peace and love. Take care.